At the end of the 2014 Formula One season, 27-year-old Sebastian Vettel needed a change. The four-time world champion dominated the tail end of the V8 era, winning 4 Drivers' Championships in a row from 2010 to 2013. However, he had a difficult 2014 season, with himself and Red Bull struggling to adapt to the new regulations. Midway through the season, the German driver made the tough decision to leave Red Bull and move to Ferrari. And when Vettel joined Ferrari, he had a single goal in mind, which was to emulate his boyhood hero Michael Schumacher and win a championship for Ferrari. 5 years later, however, that goal still eludes him, and despite winning 14 races and getting 54 podiums for the team, he still hasn't become a world champion with Ferrari. And as we all know, 2020 will be Sebastian Vettel's last year at Ferrari after the two sides agreed to part ways. So in this video, I'm going to be looking back at Vettel's 6-year stint at the Italian team and ask the big question: was Sebastian Vettel's time at Ferrari a success or a failure? The 2015 season, which was Vettel's first at Ferrari, was definitely a success. Ferrari went from just 2 podiums and 0 wins in 2014 to 16 podiums and 3 wins in 2015. Not only was it a resurgent year for Ferrari, but also for Vettel. After a disappointing final season with Red Bull, Vettel really upped his game in 2015. His win in Malaysia was the first time in the turbo hybrid era that Mercedes had been beaten on true pace alone. 2016, however, couldn't have been more different. After a successful 2015 season, expectations were as high as ever, and Vettel and Ferrari were expected to challenge for the World Championship. But the car wasn't nearly as competitive as it was last year, and they actually slipped to third behind Mercedes and Red Bull. Even more concerning, it was a bit of an off-season for Vettel also. He was visibly frustrated throughout the season, clearly disappointed at the fact that he wasn't challenging for the title. So yeah, it was a bit of a disappointing season for Vettel and Ferrari, but in their defense, they could have just been focusing on the new aero regulations for 2017. And if they indeed were focusing on 2017, it certainly paid off. The 2017 Ferrari SF70 was miles better than their 2016 car, and for the first time in 7 years, Ferrari had the car to challenge for the World Championship. Vettel drove well in the first part of the season, winning 3 out of the first 6 races and finishing second in the other 3. However, Mercedes fought back in the middle of the season, and this coupled with Vettel unable to control his emotions under the safety car at Baku and his puncture in Silverstone meant that Hamilton led the championship going into Singapore. But Hamilton's lead was only 3 points, and Singapore was seen as a chance for Vettel to claw back a haul of points as the track greatly favored Ferrari. However, a misjudgment at the start by Vettel took himself, Verstappen, and Raikkonen out of the race, leaving Hamilton to cruise to victory. From that point on, Vettel was let down by his team, and various reliability issues were the nail in the coffin for his title challenge. Although Vettel and Ferrari had a strong start to the season, they ran out of steam towards the end and were outlasted by the well-oiled machine that was Hamilton and Mercedes. While in 2017 Ferrari had a championship contending car, in 2018 Ferrari had a championship winning car. Over the season, the 2018 Ferrari SF17H was the class of the field, and it was the first time since 2013 that Mercedes didn't have the best car. But these development gains didn't mean much because the team and the drivers started to crack under the pressure and make some costly mistakes. Despite this, the sheer performance of the 2018 Ferrari and some flashes of brilliance by Vettel meant that he still led the championship going into the German Grand Prix. And Vettel took pole, setting the Hockenheim lap record. He led the race until an early pit stop, which put him behind teammate Kimi Raikkonen, who was on older tires and a different strategy. However, Vettel got stuck behind Raikkonen for several laps, and the indecisiveness of the Ferrari pit wall and their reluctance to let Vettel pass meant that he lost command of the race. It then started to rain lightly, and Vettel was pushing to maintain his lead until with 15 laps to go, Vettel lost control of his car at the Sachs curve and went straight into the barriers, which was the end of his race. Hamilton was able to take victory after starting down in 14th and took the lead of the championship. And like Singapore in 2017, Vettel never recovered. The mistakes continued, the wins dried up, and he again lost the championship to the mighty Hamilton and Mercedes. And this loss in 2018 really hurt because Vettel really should have won with the car that he had, but costly mistakes from Vettel and the team derailed his championship challenge. A lot of people say that Germany 2018 was the beginning of the end of Sebastian Vettel's time at Ferrari, but I think that the real beginning of the end was at the Italian Grand Prix weekend when Ferrari announced that Charles Leclerc would be replacing Kimi Raikkonen at Ferrari for 2019. This removed Vettel's loyal teammate and friend Kimi Raikkonen and replaced him with a young and hungry rookie who was eager to dethrone Vettel and prove his worth at Ferrari. Ferrari's 2019 SF90 wasn't nearly as competitive as their previous car, and any title hopes were eliminated when the dominant Mercedes took a record 5 1-2 finishes in the first 5 races. And even worse for Vettel, his young teammate Leclerc was much better than expected, and the two Ferrari drivers were evenly matched throughout the season. However, Vettel had worse reliability, which meant that Leclerc scored more points over the season. During 2019, Leclerc signed a 4-year contract extension with Ferrari, and this basically confirmed that he was their driver for the future. And this left Vettel in a compromised position because he was no longer wanted at the team. Basically, they were putting all of their eggs into Leclerc's basket, and this obviously led to the news that he would be leaving Ferrari at the end of 2020, and that is pretty much where we are now. So looking back at Vettel's 5 seasons at Ferrari, it is safe to say that it was more of a failure than a success. When Vettel joined Ferrari, his main objective was to emulate Michael Schumacher and win a championship for the Italian team. Although he achieved many special wins and is the third most successful driver in their history, he ultimately didn't win a championship, which means that he failed their number one objective. And it's not like Vettel didn't have his chances. He could have won in 2017 and certainly should have won in 2018 with the car that he had. Despite the fact that Vettel failed to win a championship at Ferrari, I don't think that it should detract from his legacy. 2015 and 2017 were great seasons for Vettel, and in the latter of those years, he could have won the title but was let down by the reliability of the 2017 Ferrari. As for 2018, he definitely did make a lot of errors, but so did the team. Let's use Germany as an example. The 2018 German Grand Prix is obviously most famous for Vettel crashing out of the lead with 15 laps to go. But earlier in the race, Vettel lost valuable time being stuck behind his own teammate Kimi Raikkonen, who was on a different strategy. Vettel sat behind Raikkonen for several laps before he finally convinced the team to switch around the order. By then, he had already lost valuable time and had damaged his tires. And in the changing conditions, Vettel pushed hard to gain back the lost time, and this resulted in the costly mistake that he pretty much never recovered from. Some other examples include when they gave Raikkonen the slipstream in Monza instead of Vettel, or their miscalculation in Q3 in Suzuka, which put Vettel out of position in the race. These both led to Vettel spinning out of contention. So I think a lot of the mistakes that Vettel had made could have been prevented had the team made better decisions so he wasn't put in those situations in the first place. I'm not for 1 second saying that Vettel is innocent. He definitely shouldn't have made those mistakes regardless of, the team's decisions. But with a more competent team around him, he wouldn't have made as many mistakes in 2018. I assure you, if it was Vettel at Mercedes, he would have won that world championship. And he joins a star-studded list of drivers who were never able to win at Ferrari. Think about it. Sebastian Vettel, Fernando Alonso, and Alain Prost were at Ferrari for 14 combined seasons, but they never won a single championship, constructors or drivers. If you have, in my opinion, 3 of the top 10 drivers of all time for 14 seasons and can't win anything, that says a lot about the team, which I could spend an entirely different video talking about. So at the end of the day, even though Vettel didn't win a world championship with Ferrari, he is one of many world champions that were unable to do so. Despite there being some questionable performances from time to time, overall Vettel still drove very well during his time at Ferrari, and he still is the 3rd most successful driver for the most successful team in the history of the sport. And to be fair to Vettel, he still has the 2020 season to, that is still his final chance to win a championship with Ferrari. Obviously, the season starts in July in Austria, and imagine if he can somehow win 2020 and then leaves Ferrari. That would be the biggest mic drop story in Formula 1 history. Just wins a championship and then he promptly leaves the team. But that's going to do it for this video where we looked at Sebastian Vettel's time at Ferrari. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to subscribe to my channel, Kids Love F1, for more great F1 content, and please help me get to 500 subscribers. We are on the road, very, very close. And yeah, as always, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.